Roger, it's me. If that plane leaves the ground and you're not on it, you'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next week or the week after that. It's possible in September you'll be confident you've done the right thing. Hell, by the time spring rolls around, you may be certain on your decision. Chances are you may live a long, happy life and die peacefully in your sleep many years from now, surrounded by loved ones. Is that what you want?
Gee, I wish I had a moment to think about it, maybe a day or two. But Bogey, what about us?
Roger, we'll always have Paris.
Ah, Paris, where my subtle brand of sophisticated comedy is appreciated.
Roger, it doesn't take much to see the problem of two little people doesn't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world.
I don't know about beans, Bogey. They're the musical fruit. The more you eat, the more you...
That's it. I'm cutting out of this sketch. Whew.
Well, I guess we better get on with the show.
Hello. This is me, Private Eye, Joshua James Marchant. I hope that ridiculous little sketch came through okay. I'm seeing the chat. Everything seems to be going well. Good. Nix is here. We've got a couple people watching. Something very exciting happened. Gary K. Wolfe, creator of Roger Rabbit and author of the novel that we will be reading today, shared this post, shared this live stream, so that's very exciting. We'll just give ourselves a few minutes for people to turn up. Oh, good. We've got some new faces here. The Retro Oreo. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. I hope some of our repeat viewers will be returning to us. For those of you who are new, oh, there's Steven. Steven's in the house. Hey, Steven. How are you? I'm a private eye in the 1940s, as you can tell by the attire and the whole setup here. And Eleanor's here. Danielle's here. Good. I'm glad you appreciated the effort I put into these little puppets. They'll be returning next week. Oh, and you may notice that this Bogart picture, Getty Images. Don't pay no attention to that. Those mugs don't own me, see? Thank you. Eleanor says, nice detective outfit. There goes the music. This is my friend John's. He may or may not be with us today. He dresses very fancy every day. He shows up to our animation studio in a full suit and tie every day. So I knew that if anyone was going to have a 1940s detective jacket and a hat with a little bow on the side, it would be John. What have we got? Cool. John, one of my regulars, says, great vibe. We're running to the vet at the Mo, but we're catching up afterwards. Very cool. No worries. Don't put your life on hold for me. This is just something for fun to keep us occupied during the lockdown. Danny says, goodness gracious. I assume she's getting a look at the duds, see? Yeah. I even loosened my tie a little bit because that seems on brand. This hat is actually way too big for my head. You'll notice that it basically doubles the size of my my cranium. I don't know. Are hats supposed to sit right on top of your cranium? I always pictured you pull them down a little bit, but I don't want to bust up my friend's hat. Thank you very much. We'll just be waiting for a few more minutes for people to turn up. I'm very sorry to do this live. I might just send out a note to my buddy Simon, who really hangs out for these things. Let's see. I hope everyone's having a as good a time as possible during lockdown. For those of you not coming from New Zealand, which is where I'm streaming from, our country has enjoyed 100 days of... we just completed 100 days of no new cases, being COVID-free, and then, regrettably, as we knew it would, as all epidemiologists have predicted, some new cases did pop up from within the community, so now we're back under lockdown. I was going to do this I was going to do this at the studio that I work at, the animation studio. It would give me a little more space, some better lighting maybe, but it wasn't to be. The lockdown has happened, so now we're at home, and I figured I've got plenty of time on my hands, so why don't we do this now? Oh, whoopsie doodle. I meant to send that to Simon. This is a real professional operation, by the way. My puppets are taped to pens and pencils. Printed these out from my printer. A little magic for you. My printer is out of black ink, very helpfully when you're trying to print something in black and white. So this is actually bright pink, and I had to shade in the parts that are meant to be black. Yeah, a real classy operation we're running here. Okay, it is just a few more minutes till we're in. So I've got a couple of goodies for you early birds. Today, for those of you unaware, we will be reading Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Gary K. Wolfe, creator of Roger Rabbit, upon which the film, it's always backwards, upon which the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit was based. Obviously, as is the case with any adaptation, there are plenty of changes between a book and a movie. So I think you'll find that this book is very, very different from the film, different enough that you will get a really different experience. Those of you joining us for the first time, last lockdown, when we were previously under lockdown a couple months ago, I performed my Star Trek The Next Generation meets Who Framed Roger Rabbit fanfiction live on YouTube like this, in full color, if you can believe it. I can afford that. It was a lot of fun. I think the people in the chat said they were having a lot of fun. I did all the voices, Patrick Stewart yelling at Roger Rabbit about crashing the Enterprise. It was good fun. So, obviously, I didn't have time to write a whole nother, good grammar. I didn't have time to write another fan fiction. Didn't really necessarily have any ideas for ones anyway, but I figured this, the book, which I just finished reading, borrowed from the Lending Library, would be a great follow-up of sorts. This will be much more of a straight live read, because I don't have nearly as many props and sound effects and stuff. It'll mostly just be me reading. Oh, and that's the other thing that I wanted to mention. Most of the voices I have picked out. Obviously, returning characters like Roger, Jessica, and Baby Herman will be themselves. Eddie Valiant, I think I'm going to do as Patrick Stewart, because that was a lot of fun to do last time. I think that's a fun pairing. But if you have suggestions for other characters that I'm going to be coming up against in this chapter, I believe in this chapter we meet Rocco DeGreasy, who is the sort of oily head of a comic strip syndicate, very lawyer-like, it mentions, and Carol Masters, who is a person of interest in the case that Eddie is trying to solve, and she is the photographer who photographs the Baby Herman comic strip. In this book, as we'll discover, it's less about animated cartoon characters walking around and more about comic strip characters, which leads to a whole bunch of interesting world building that we'll get into. So, if you have a suggestion for how you would like, what character you'd like me to do for Rocco DeGreasy, head of the syndicate, drop it in the chat. Same with Carol Masters. I have backup voices, so if we don't come up with anything, or you come up with something that I can't really do, I'm an okay impressionist, but everyone has their limits. We'll soldier on. So it is 10 past. Who have we got? Hey, look at all these people. I haven't been keeping a close enough eye on the chat. There's a lot of people here. Here is Rasheen, good friend of mine from work. Lovely to see you. And Chris, hi. Hey, Chris. And it's Mike. Mike is facing off against Redman, our studio's arch enemy, if you will. It's a whole story there. Hey, it's Joel. Joel's here too. Well, this is all very exciting. So, it is 10 past 2, which was our elected starting time. So, let's begin, shall we? All right, is everybody comfortable? I might do away with the hat for now. It's not really... It wasn't a perfect fit. It wasn't made for my head. So, oh, here we go. Muck Putty. Muck Putty. So I assume that's Ryan from the studio, head of the studio that I work at, a director. He says, I'm writing an episode of Jandalburn, which New Zealanders should all be checking out on TVNZ on demand. Great for your kids. he says, I accidentally end up plagiarizing Roger Rabbit. I blame you. Yeah, that's me, all right. Cool. Well, it looks like we've got a lot of people here, so let's dive in, shall we? Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Gary K. Wolfe. The dedication is to Bugs, Donald, Minnie, and the rest of the gang at the B Street Smoke Shop. Chapter 1. I found the bungalow and rang the bell. My client answered the door. He was almost my height, close to 6 feet, but only if you counted the 18-inch ears. He wore only a baggy pair of shorts held up by brightly colored suspenders. His shoulders stooped so badly he had to secure his suspender tops in place with crossed pieces of cellophane tape. For his eyes he had twin black dots floating in the center of 2 oblong white saucers. His white stomach, nose, toes, and palms on a light brown body made him resemble someone who had just walked face first into a freshly painted wall. I'm Eddie Valiant, Private Eye. You the one who called?
Yes, I am,
he said, extending a fuzzy paw.
I'm Roger Rabbit.
His words came out, encased in a balloon that floated over his head. The robber... A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U. I should have done some vocal exercises before I started this mess. The rabbit ushered me into his living room. The angular furniture reminded me of the upward-reaching spires in caves. That, combined with an extremely low ceiling and stale air, gave the room the closed-in nature of an underground burrow. Perfect interior design for a rabbit. The bunny opened a liquor cabinet and brought out an earthenware jug emblazoned with 3 X's.
Drink?
He asked. Since Toons could not legally buy human-manufactured liquor, most drank the moonshine produced by their country cousins in Dogpatch and Hoot and Holler. I don't know about Hoot and Holler, but I know that Dogpatch is where Lil Abner, famous comic strip character in the 1940s, sort of America's flirtation with country yokels. This was an amusing new stereotype that had sort of just been invented, discovered. So that's where Dogpatch comes from. There are a lot of references to comic strip characters, which I'm not as familiar with as animated characters, but I'll point them out if I get them. Potent stuff. Few humans could handle it. Although no stranger to strong drink, I knew my limitations well enough to pass.
Mind if I do?
The rabbit asked.
Fine with me,
I said. The rabbit cradled the jug in his elbow and guzzled down a healthy swig. Almost instantly, twin puffs of smoke shot out his ears, drifted lazily upwards, and bounced gently against the ceiling. I imagine it like a helium balloon, bobbing against the ceiling. Quite nonchalantly, the rabbit pulled a large butterfly net out from behind the sofa, snared the bobbling whiffets, and shook them free through an open window. They joined forces, floated merrily skyward, and expanded into a soft, billowy cloud.
Cumulonimbus,
the rabbit remarked, as he watched the evidence of his indulgence drift away. The rabbit closed the window and drew the drapes to protect his frail parchment skin from the drying effects of the early morning sun. He hippity-hopped across the room to his desk, returned, and handed me a check.
A retainer! I hope it's large enough.
It certainly was. At my regular rates, the check would buy my services for nearly a week.
Maybe I'd better outline my problem, said the rabbit. I know all the cash in the world wouldn't persuade a private eye to take on an unjust cause.
I nodded. If the rabbit only knew. I had taken on numerous unjust cases in the course of my career, and for a lot less than all the cash in the world. A lot less. The rabbit picked up a walnut-inlaid cigar box off a mushroom-shaped coffee table.
Carrot?
He asked. I looked inside. Sure enough, carrots. Carefully selected for uniformity of color, size, and shape, and alternated big end to little end so that the maximum number of them could be squeezed inside. Each bore a narrow gold and red brand proclaiming its product a product of mid-state Illinois, generally acknowledged as the world's finest source of the orange nibblers. I declined. The rabbit selected a chunky specimen for himself and gnawed at it noisily, frickling his chin with tiny orange chips that flaked off in the gap between his front incisors.
About a year ago, the DeGreasy brothers, the cartoon syndicate, told me that if I signed with them, they'd give me my own strip.
He laid his half-eaten carrot on an end table beside a display frame of autograph photos, some human, some toon. They included Snoopy, Joe Namath, Beetle Bailey, John F. Kennedy, and in a group shot, Dick Tracy, Secret Agent X9, and J. Edgar Hoover. A nice pastiche of mid-century icons, both comic strip and real historical people.
Instead, they made me a second banana to a dopey, obese, thumb-sucking sniveler named Baby Herman.
So you find yourself another syndicate.
I can't. The rabbit's face collapsed. My contract binds me to the Greasy Brothers for another 20 years. When I asked them to release me so I could look for work elsewhere, they refused.
They give you any reason?
None. Being somewhat of an amateur private eye myself, I did some legwork. He displayed a hind limb which would have looked exceptionally good dangling from the end of a keychain. I nosed around the industry and uncovered a rumor that somebody wants to buy out my contract and give me a starring role. But the DeGreasy brothers refused to sell. I want you to find out what's going on. If the DeGreasys won't star me, why won't they deal me away? Sounded horribly boring. But one more look at his chick convinced me to at least go through the motions. I hold out my notebook and pen. Normally, I would have asked some questions about his background and personal life, but since I only intended to give this case a lick and a promise anyway, why bother? I asked for the DeGreasy's address, and he rattled it off.
I'll stay in touch,
I promised on my way out.
See you in the funny papers.
That is Chapter 1. Let's take a look at the comments. What have we got going on? Cool. Lots of people from the studio are here, including... Katrin is here. Hooray! Good old Katrin from the previous stream, who's been a real supporter, a good cheerleader for these little performances of mine. Let's call them that. That's polite. All right, Chapter 2. I stopped off at a newsstand and bought a candy bar for lunch and a paper to read while I ate it, making sure to get a receipt for my expense report. I turned to the comic section and found the Baby Herman strip. A rabbit appeared in one panel out of 4, barely visible behind the smoke and flame of an exploding cigar given to him by Baby Herman. Do I have a cigar in here? I've got a small box of props here. Not that I intend to use a whole lot of them. Oh well. Here's a cigar. I've had a wonderful time. This wasn't it, but I've had one. I folded the paper shut. Hardly an earth-shaking caper, this one. A fast buck and not much more. But what did I expect? Hobnobbing with a rabbit only gets you to Wonderland in fairy tales. I met the DeGreasy brothers, Rocco and Dominic, in their offices high atop one of LA's most prestigious skyscrapers. If anyone has a suggestion for the voice of Rocco or Dominic, now would be the time. One of them is more of a lawyer, the brains of the operation, and the other is the heavy, the muscle, tough guy. The two were human, although almost comical in their marked resemblance to one another. Their rigid foreheads formed a wobble of demarcation between bowl-shaped haircuts and frizzy eyebrows. Their noses would have looked perfect behind a chrome horn bolted to the handlebars of a bicycle. Smudgy mustaches curtained their circular porthole mouths. Their biceps looked to be barely half the size of their forearms. And they had feet large enough to cut 15 seconds off any duck's time in the 100-meter freestyle. Is he saying they've got massive forearms? These Popeye people? I don't know. What we got? Oh, that's great. Oh, I will... Oh, okay. Well, I'll just stop here for a brief second. Mike is asking, do you highlight voices in a different color ahead of time to make sure you know which voice to switch to? No, but that's a good idea. To be honest, it's a little bit of a balancing act. You sort of have to take by context clues who's having the conversation, and if possible, look ahead to say, who said this? I ran into that trouble a few times with my Star Trek fanfiction, you know? I'd be reading a thing. You have no honor, Captain. Oh, wait, that's not Data. That's meant to be Worf.
You have no honor, Captain.
We've got some suggestions, which is very exciting. Aku from Samurai Jack, if possible. I mean, admittedly, Rocco doesn't appear for that long in the story, so maybe. Lionel Hutz. I could maybe do Lionel Hutz. That could be a good one. Rocco's Modern Life Rocco. Vincent Price. Guys, these are all too good. These are all too exciting. All right, what am I going to do? I'll do a little test and see what's the best. Aku. Let's press on with the story for now. Had the DeGreasy boys been discovered frozen beneath some Arctic tundra, a good case would have been made for there being long-sought missing link between humans and toons. But as funny as they looked, when I checked them out, they had come up professional and efficient, the most astute guys in the comic strip business. I gave my card to Rocco, the eldest, who passed it across his handsome antique desk to his brother Dominic. Not wanting to spend another minute longer than necessary on the case, I came straight to the point. I told them Roger Rabbit had hired me to find out why they refused to honor their contractual obligation to star him in a strip of their own. Rocco chuckled, then scowled, the way a father might when he sees his youngster do something irritating, but cute. Stephen Fry used to highlight the highlight method for the audiobooks for Harry Potter. It's very worthwhile. I think I'm going to go with Rocco. I know I can do Rocco, and it's not going to obliterate the throat the way Aku would.
Foolish samurai warrior, I will destroy you!
It's a little tough on the vocal cords. Lionel Hutz, everybody. No, that's meant to say no, money down. It's not bad, but it's not quite as distinct. And Vincent Price. Everybody loves to do Vincent Price, the most wonderful voice in the world. Fun times. But let's press ahead. I think Rocco is going to be it.
Let me explain our position with regard to Roger Rabbit,
he said, without the slightest trace of rancor. His precise manner of speech and his 6-bit vocabulary gave me a surprise. From his looks, I expected Goofy, but got Owen Cantrell, Wall Street lawyer, instead.
My brother Dominic and I signed Roger specifically because we felt he would play well as a foil for Baby Herman. We never made any mention of a solo strip then or since.
Rocco leaned toward me, displaying in the process an impressive array of his character's merchandising tie-ins. A Superman tie bar, Bullwinkle moose cufflinks, and a Mickey Mouse wristwatch.
Roger frequently concocts these absurd stories such as this one. We tolerate his delusions because of the great popularity with his audience. Roger makes a perfect fall guy, and his fans love him for it. However, he doesn't have the charisma to carry a strip of his own. We never even considered giving him one. Right, Dominic?
Dominic's head bounced up and down with the vigor of a spring-necked plastic dog. Rocco got up, opened a file drawer, and pulled out a sheaf of papers, which he handed to me.
Roger's contract. Read it through. You'll find no mention of a solo strip, and it stipulates a very generous salary, I might add.
He closed the drawer and returned to his chair.
We've treated Roger fairly and ethically. He has no reason whatsoever to complain.
I flipped through the contract. It seemed to be in order. What about the rumor going around that somebody wants to buy out Roger's contract and make him a star? Rocco and Dominic exchanged quizzical glances and shrugged more or less in unison.
News to us,
said Rocco. It's literally Rocco. I just got that. Boy, I'm running on fumes today.
If someone did approach us with an offer for Roger, if it made financial sense, and if Roger wanted to go, we would gladly sell him off. We're not the ones to stand in the way of our employees' advancement, and there's certainly no shortage of rabbits to replace him.
He stood and ushered me to the door.
Mr. Valiant, I suggest you consider this case closed, and next time, get yourself a more mentally stable client.
Sounded reasonable to me. That's chapter 2. How are we doing for time? We've been streaming for 25 minutes. Let's keep going. I tend to do these things for about an hour. I think that's a good length of time. What have we got? Comments? Oh, thank you. Katrin says that's a cracking Lionel Hutz. Thanks. Yeah, I do my best. R.I.P. Phil Hartman. Very talented man. Sheen says you're so good at voices. Thank you. Means a lot. Chelsea's here. Hi, Chelsea. Hello. I'm reading. Look at me, Ma. All right. Chapter 3. Who have we got in this chapter? Okay. I took a few more random jogs. The trench coat, broad-brimmed hat, and large sunglasses matched me move for move. A tail. I picked up my pace, turned a corner, and ducked into a doorway. Seconds later, my tail came around the corner after me. I let him get 3 paces past, then jumped him, grabbing his arm. I twisted it behind his back and slammed him against the nearest wall. Who are you and what do you want? I hissed, applying some persuasive pressure.
I was only curious how a real detective operates.
My tail's balloon read.
I just thought I'd tag along, kind of observe from a distance. I'm sorry if I fouled up your modus operandi.
I released my grip, snatched away the broad-brimmed hat, exposing a carefully accordioned set of 18-inch ears. Look, I told the rabbit, honing his hat against his concave chest. When I have something worthwhile to report, I'll get in touch. Otherwise, you stay away from me. Clear?
The rabbit smoothed out his ears. However, the left one sprang up in a tight clump, giving his head the lopsided appearance of a half-straightened paperclip.
Yes, I understand.
He fiddled with his ear, fiddled with his sunglasses, fiddled with his buttons on his trench coat, until he finally ran out of externals and began to fiddle with his soul.
My entire life I've wanted to be a detective.
Sure, him and a million others. Toon mystery strips sucker them into believing that knight-errants always won. Yeah, maybe Rip Kirby bats 1,000, but I consider it great if I go 1 for 10.
Forget it,
I said.
Besides, I'm not so sure how much longer I'm going to stay on the case.
I reported my conversation with the Degreesies, adding that they'd suggested him as a poster boy for the failing Mental Health Society. He took it in stride.
I never said they put it in writing, that bit about me getting my own strip, he countered. They made me the offer verbally, and Rocco repeated it several times since.
Anybody besides you ever hear him?
Sure. He said it once at a photo session in front of Baby Herman and Carol Masters, my photographer. Just ask them. They'll remember. As for my being crazy, yes, I see a psychiatrist, but so do half the toons in the business. That hardly qualifies me as a full-blown loony.
I don't know,
I said, figuring to cut it off here.
The whole mess sounds like a job for a lawyer.
Please, the rabbit begged, stick with it. I'll double your fee.
Such persuasive words.
All right, you double my fee and I stay on your case.
I turned and walked away. The rabbit plopped his hat into the chasm between his ears and bounded after me, hopping so fast that his word balloons whipped across the top of his head, snapped loose with sharp pings at the base of his neck, and bounced across the sidewalk.
Let me help you, he said when he caught up with me. It would mean a great deal to me. Please.
No way,
I said flatly.
I work alone. Always have, always will.
Call me rude, but I say what I mean. If people want sympathy, let them see a priest. At least he got the message. He did an abrupt about-face and shambled away. What have we got? You've got to get into the Goon Show. You'll love the voices. I'm familiar with the Goon Show a little. I know that they're a big influence on the Pythons, the Monty Python gang, and that they're all about wacky voices. I know Peter Sellers started there.
Dr. Strangelove started there, everyone's favorite voice whenever you need a slightly deranged, crazy German scientist. That's where you go now.
I love that voice. Chelsea says, well done, son. Thank you. All right, let's press forward. Chapter 4. Don't worry, this is a novel, not the world's longest. I think it'll break up into a few good parts, which we can do weekly, is my plan. Let's carry on. Chapter 4. Apparently the strip business paid babies a whole lot better than it paid rabbits. Baby Herman lived in an honest-to-God, balconied, marble-pillared, stone lions at the front mansion, tucked neatly away in the kind of neighborhood where middle-class rubbernecks ride bicycles on Sunday afternoons. His place covered nearly enough land to qualify it for statehood. The house proper sat far back on the property, and a jumbo herd of bib-overalled toon goat gardeners puttered around the grounds, nibbling back the grass and shrubs. The ultimate toon status symbol, a human servant, in this case a butler in full regalia, opened the door, ushered me through to a den furnished in a sophisticated playpen. A Barcelona chair rested against a rocking horse. Abstract metal sculptures straddled wobbly towers of alphabet blocks. A fine post-impressionistic painting hung above a wooden peg supporting a tatty security blanket, one end well chewed. Baby Herman, 2 feet high, wearing only a diaper, and bald save for one dark hair sprouting from the precise center of his crown, sat in a high chair in front of the TV. A good portion of his lunch, strained peas, pureed beef, and applesauce, still clung to his chin and to the tray in front of him. He was watching his own show, giggling happily every time one of his toon foils took a clout to the chops. The butler announced me as Eddie Valiant, private investigator, representing Roger Rabbit. Then he left me and Baby Herman alone. I had no idea how to proceed. I didn't have much of a way with kids. They generally react to me as they would to the man who shot Bambi's mother. On the TV screen, a tuxedoed raccoon struggled vainly to extricate himself from the inside of a trombone. Baby Herman laughed uproariously and pounded his tray with a silver spoon. A literal silver spoon, I like that. Splattering the front of my coat with a fine layer of goo. I steeled myself for a long, hard afternoon. Just then the butler returned, bearing a cigar box. Ooh.
The cigar makes a return. Full of robust Havanas. Good stuff, I suppose. I helped myself. To my surprise, so did Baby Herman.
You're kind of young for that stuff, aren't you?
I asked. Ha ha! Appeared over Baby Herman's head in the lettering style found on a preschooler's handmade valentine. He lit up and exhaled a cloud which would have done credit to a locomotive.
That's rich! Just how old do you think I am?
When he turned his head so I could examine his profile, he also twisted his word balloon around 180 degrees, thus flopping his words into a mirror image of themselves.
I never play guessing games.
Come on, just this once. Try!
Sorry.
Okay, then I'll tell you anyway.
Oh, there we go. Wrong voice. Take a drink. Or, something less destructive. Take a puff of your fake candy cigar.
Okay, I'll tell you anyway.
Baby Herman unsnapped his tray and climbed to the floor where he stood, puffing his cigar, one chubby hand on his hip.
I'm 36. Don't look it, do I?
I admitted that he didn't.
Most people guess me between 3 or 4. Of course, most people don't know enough about tunes to realize that some age and some don't.
And you're one of the lucky ones.
Baby Herman plopped down on his hind end and zigzagged his fingers across the rug.
Depends on your point of view. Eternal youth isn't everything it's cracked up to be. Imagine going through life eating mush, wearing diapers, and sucking on plastic doodads.
He displayed his teething ring hung on a gold chain around his neck.
And women. Need I even mention women? Here I sit with a 36-year-old lusting a 3-year-old dinky.
He climbed aboard his rocking horse and began a bouncy journey to nowhere. That's one of those lines that transcended from the book all the way to the movie. All right. Here we go.
Why does the funny bunny need a detective? He decided to file for a divorce? That what you do? Bust into motel rooms and shoot quickie photos of cheating wives?
An obscene musing encased in a fluffy, cherubic balloon floated above the kid's head. It bobbled around playfully a while before impaling itself on a single wiry hair and bursting in a shower of dust that layered his shoulders with a fine powder unknowledgeable humans mistook for dandruff. It's interesting the way that the speech bubbles work in this world. All tunes create speech bubbles when they speak, and like the puffs of balloons, they just kind of float away. I imagine they create a lot of waste wherever they go, falling to the floor. You'd be stepping over them. In this case, one burst and just created a layer of dust. He immediately conjured up a second image, even worse.
Roger Rabbit has a wife?
He did until she left him.
Baby Herman dismounted his rocking horse and waddled from under his pornographic fantasy.
Jessica Rabbit.
His second vision turned to sand and dirtied the carpet behind him.
Gorgeous creature. Does a lot of commercials. Wouldn't mind taking her for a hop myself.
How long have they been split up?
I guess 2, maybe 3 weeks.
What caused the breakup?
How should I know? What do I look like, Mary Worth? I mind my business. Let other people mind theirs.
He crawled to the wall and pulled his blanket off its peg. He bundled it around his legs, torso, and head, enveloping himself so completely that only the end of his cigar remained uncovered.
Confidentially,
he whispered from out of the snuggly depths of his blanket,
I hear she left Roger for Rocco DeGreasy.
Rocco DeGreasy and a female toon rabbit sounded ridiculous. But I'd heard of guys with stranger taste in women.
Actually, I'm not interested in Roger's wife. I'm investigating Roger's treatment by the DeGreasy Syndicate. I understand you heard Rocco promise Roger his own strip.
The blanket bobbed up and down.
Sure, day before yesterday at a photo session, but only because the bunny was threatening to hit him over the head with a lunchbox. It was the first time since they'd met, since Roger's marital breakup. Roger accused Rocco of putting pressure on Jessica to leave him. Rocco denied it, and Roger went for him. Carol Masters, our photographer, jumped in between them and kept them apart. Roger came up with that bit about giving Roger his own strip, maybe mainly to cool him off, but it didn't work. I never saw Roger so riled. He kept threatening to kill Rocco. Can you imagine that coming from a pussycat like Roger Rabbit? After Carol finally got Roger calmed down, Rocco offered to drive him home. He suggested they could sit down there and discuss their differences rationally, until they had them all worked out. A fair and classy guy, that Rocco. Anybody else would have canned Roger on the spot.
Did Roger and Rocco leave together?
Nah, Roger stormed off out of the studio in a huff. Darn inconsiderate of him. We still had half a day's shooting left that we had to cancel. Threw my feeding and nap time schedule into a complete tizzy.
So Rocco wasn't serious when he offered Roger his own strip.
Nope. Rocco was scared, plain and simple. When Roger threatened to kill him, I believe he meant it, and Rocco believed it too.
The butler entered and gave the lumpy blanket a courtly bow.
Don't forget your 2 o'clock photo session today, sir.
I worked in Vincent Price after all.
Right.
Baby Herman unwrapped himself and stood.
I'm doing some baby food spots.
He ground his cigar into the rug.
I sold 8 million jars of that junk last year. My wholesome image.
He extended his pudgy arms to Eddie.
Carry me to the limousine?
Outside, I set him into an infant seat, strapped into the front of in the front bucket of a white Mercedes.
Hey, detective, said Baby Herman as I shut the door. I like you. You come back sometime, we'll have us a party. I'll supply the funny hats, the cake, the noisemakers. You supply the broads. Just make sure they go for younger men.
Baby Herman waved bye-bye, and his Mercedes pulled away. What have we got? Okay, we've got some good comments coming in. Simon Crane, I'm so glad he made it. He said, "Oh, how I've missed you, Roger." Lovely. Chris says, the Goon Show were also masters of Foley and sound effects. Very true. I should be checking these guys out. They're all on YouTube, I'm pretty sure. Katrin can do Little Jim, the kid who goes, "He's fallen in the water." I have no idea if that's what they sound like. And Bryn says, speech bubbles are what clouds are made of in Toontown. Whoa, that's interesting. I would have guessed that it was the clouds were made up of all the puffs coming out of people's ears from when they drink Toonshine. Rasheen's mum thinks I'm really good. Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much. I'm just going to have a quick swig of water because
Baby Herman really does a number on the throat.
And then we'll carry on with Chapter 4. Pardon me. Have a drink. Poof! Puffs come out of my ears. Anyway, let us proceed. Chapter 5. I'll say one thing for the rabbit. He certainly was a persistent little bugger. As soon as I got back to the city, I spotted him again, maybe half a block back, matching me move for move. He wore a trench coat still slightly open, exposing purple lederhosen and an orange shirt. His hat brim scaled on both sides against fully unfurled ears. Inconspicuous? Maybe at a clown convention. Certainly not on Sunset Boulevard at 2 in the afternoon. I debated whether or not to brace him again and give him another ultimatum. He'd probably just ignore it the way he had the last one. Obviously not one to give up easily, that Roger. A trait I admired in anybody, Toon Rabbits included. What the heck? If he insisted on wasting his time hopping along in my footsteps, let him. So long as he kept his distance and didn't interfere. I entered a big downtown office building. The rabbit ducked behind a lamppost across the street, doing his best to appear unconcerned in the presence of a small poodle sniffing at his hydrant red sneakers. On the building's directory, I found the listing for Carol Masters, photographer. Carol Masters, so she is, as mentioned, a person of interest in the case. She is the photographer for the Baby Herman Roger Rabbit comic strip. So, if anyone has any suggestions for a woman's voice, I'll be very interested to hear them. My range as a female impersonator is slightly less expansive than my male voices, but all the same, if you have a suggestion, please go ahead.
If there are no good suggestions, I'm just going to do him as, what is her name? Katharine Hepburn. Really, I will. Oh, Mr. Valiant. You do go on. Come up and see me sometime. That's Mae West, but all the same.
Let's carry on. I boarded a human-only elevator and rode it up to Master's floor. That social commentary still present in the in the book, obviously. I opened the door to her studio and ran smack into a pile of props big enough to challenge Sir Edmund Hillary, New Zealander. Masters herself, a human, thank God, since I didn't know if I could handle another tune today, stood in the studio's only uncluttered space, a rectangular whitewashed area about 10 feet long, 5 feet by 5 feet wide. Mushmouth over here. Positioning her lights and camera. She had her lean, athletic body, nicely displayed in tight jeans and a blue t-shirt sporting an autographed photo of Casper the Friendly Ghost. Baby soft brown hair played tag with her shoulders. Her tongue underscored her concentration with a thin layer of moisture traced across her creamy red lips. Ooh la la. For the sake of male sanity, I hope she changed perfumes after sundown, since the one she had on could send every male within sniffing range out onto the streets to bay at the moon. The lenses in her big, round glasses were the kind that reacted to skin temperature, changing color according to the wearer's mood, going from dark amber to rosy pink. Right now, they fluttered somewhere in between, not happy, not sad, just doing a day's work. Oh my god. We've got some good suggestions in the chat. I do think it's really funny, and I think that Gary K. Wolfe is astute enough to know, the cliches of the detective genre, the femme fatale, the tortured metaphor. So I think he knows what he's doing with this, fairly ridiculous sexualized description of a woman, which you get not just in noir books, but every book. I'm sure you guys have seen that, those posts about, like, there's an award for worst description of a woman's body by a male writer. They're pretty hilarious. They do get carried away. I think is she wearing glasses, did it say? Lenses in her big round glasses. All right. I do sort of have a costume for this. I'm sorry that I didn't have a baby's costume. Let's put this on. This is going to be great. Oh, is this even going to fit over my head? Ugh.
Yes, hello, detective. Hello, detective, it's me, Carol Masters. Dream girl.
This is ridiculous. So, we've got... Okay, Betty White. I saw a great quote from Golden Girls the other day. What do you mean, do I oppose the overthrow of the government? Do you throw the overthrow of the government by violence or force? I'd go with violence. Betty Boop. Betty Boop. I did that last time, and I suck at doing it.
Oh, Mr. Valiant! Boopy-doopy-doop!
Bill Shatner for Carol Masters.
Mr. Detective, I don't know what you suspect me of doing, but rest assured, I'm innocent.
That was just bleeding back into Katharine Hepburn. Marge Simpson.
Oh, homie!
No one can do a good Marge. You can only do shitty, fake, cartoonish Marge.
Mr. Valiant, I hope you don't suspect me of murder.
Lois from Family Guy. I changed my mind to Tina Turner. What does Tina Turner sing? Mad Max. What movie is she in? Mad Max. Beyond Thunderdome. I don't know how to do a Tina Turner. Lois from Family Guy. I think I'm going to do that. I think I can do that pretty well. And I'm committing to this. She was gorgeous. Her hair perfectly affixed to her skull. And definitely didn't look like she'd walked through a wind tunnel.
Can I help you with something?
Oh, is that Lois? All right.
Something I can help you with?
She said. I laid a card on her and waited for her to read it. She held it up between us, as though comparing the written description with the real thing. Apparently, I measured up to my printed notice, which she motioned me to sit. Rummaging through the prop pile, I hauled a chair from between a plastic palm tree and a bus stop sign. I reversed and straddled it so I faced her across its back. Classic cool teacher move. I can't really do that in my current chair, but you get the idea. I'm sitting backwards on a chair like this. I represent Roger Rabbit, I told her. I'd like to ask you a few questions concerning his relationship with the syndicate.
Ask away.
Is this the right choice?
Oh, Peter.
It's only really her when I'm doing that.
Peter, I'm trying to seduce you.
Whatever. Let's stick with it. Let's not change.
Ask away. Ask away.
This is going off the rails. She opened a corner cupboard. From behind half a dozen jugs of Toonshine, produced a bottle of Burgundy, which she held up with an empty glass. I nodded. She splashed out a healthy slug. I tilted it back, tossed it down in one fast swallow, and extended my empty glass for a refill. You photographed the baby Herman strip, right? Carol joined me this round, sipping her wine slowly.
I photographed baby Herman, yes, as well as a number of other degreasy strips.
It only works when you're saying,
Peter.
I'm committed, this is what we're doing.
And you were present a few days back when Roger went after Rocco DeGreasy with a lunchbox?
She nodded.
Roger accused Rocco of pressuring his wife to leave him. I never seen a rabbit so angry. If I hadn't stepped between them, I think she might have done Rocco some serious harm.
Any truth to Roger's allegation?
She studied a hanging photo of Roger Rabbit. It bore the cutesy pie inscription you'd expect from a professional buffoon.
A sweet bunny, that one,
she said fondly.
My absolute favorite subject. No big star hang-ups. Never moody or temperamental. A joy to work with. I absolutely adore him.
She flicked on several spotlights to see how many dark corners she could illuminate without lengthening her own shadow. She pulled over 2 easy chairs. One for Dagwood, one for Blondie. Another comic strip, Blondie and Dagwood. That's all the information I have on them. And set a floor lamp between them.
I believe Jessica left Roger of her own free will without the slightest bit of coercion from anybody.
Why do you think that?
I had seen men break other men's fingers with less force than Carol used to snap into her wide-angle lens.
Who knows?
She squinted into her camera, but jerked her face instantly away as though repulsed by the nastiness she saw on the other side.
A real bitch, that Jessica. You ever meet her?
No. Kind of hard for me to picture so much allure and such a devious nature in a female rabbit.
Rabbit? No, don't be misled by her name. She isn't a rabbit. She's a humanoid. She does mainly high-fashion cosmetic and car ads.
She went to her file cabinet, removed a portfolio, and passed it to me.
Jessica Rabbit.
A knockout. Every line, perfection. Creamy skin, 120 pounds well distributed on a statuesque frame, stunning red hair. Easily able to pass for a human.
What did someone like this ever see in a toon rabbit?
Carol retrieved the photos and studied them for a moment, as though trying to decide whether to return them to her files or pepper them with voodoo pins.
Nobody knows. Before Roger, she dated humans and other humanoid toons exclusively. Their marriage came as a total shock to everybody who knew them.
She slipped Jessica's photos back in the darkness where she felt they belonged.
For about a year, it appeared to work. Jessica totally changed. She quit her carousing, bad-mouthing her rivals, knocked off her on-the-set temper tantrums. She even went to several of Blondie's Bumstead's Tupperware parties.
She made a bowl out of her hands and extended it toward the right-hand chair. Then she decreased the cup of her hand to about the size of a rancid tart.
Suddenly, almost overnight, the old Jessica came roaring back, shrieking at her photographers, backstabbing everybody who disagreed with her in the slightest. She and Roger broke up shortly thereafter, and she went back to living with Rocco DeGreasy.
She went back to living with him? You mean she had lived with him before?
Sure. She left him to marry Roger. Considering that Roger had just stolen Rocco's girl, nobody in the industry could understand why. A few weeks after the marriage, the DeGreasys signed Roger to a long-term contract. Everybody figured that Jessica must have gotten them on Roger's behalf. Rocco would have done anything, even give Jessica's new husband a contract, if he thought it would get her back.
Carol picked up my card and reread the inscription, apparently concerned about my competence to practice my stated profession.
I'm surprised your client neglected to tell you any of this.
He apparently didn't consider it relevant.
I walked to the window, where I could see the rabbit still trying to protect his sneakers from the poodle in the street below.
Guess I'd better ask him why.
Will you talk to Jessica too?
Probably.
Then let me give you some advice. Be careful. She has a nasty way of sinking her hooks into photogenic men.
Carol smiled, pointing her camera at me, and clicked the shutter. My luck held. The lens didn't break.
Thanks for the warning. When I see her, I'll be sure and wear my armored undies. One last question. Have you heard the rumor that someone wants to buy out Roger's contract and give him a starring role of his own?
Yes, I'd heard. Rumors like that spring up with alarming regularity in this business. Most often they prove to be totally false. For Roger's sake, I hope this one's true, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Before I left, I got her home address and phone number, just in case I decided to ask her a few more personal questions that kept jumping to mind every time I saw her move. Whew! That was something.
how would we feel about well, maybe we change up the roles every time we do a read, so that that's an element of interactivity, something fun to look forward to each week. Who is Josh gonna do this time? Oh boy. All right. Okay. Well. Rasheen had to go. Oh, that's a shame. Cool. Rasheen's gonna look through the back catalog. It's very good. Very kind of you. Chelsea asks if Jessica has been cast. No. I mean, I was planning to do her in just my fake, not quite spot on Jessica Rabbit voice. Roger, really, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know why I ever married that rabbit. But it's not that good that I think it's, entertaining. So if people want to make suggestions for Jessica, by all means. Okay, good. People in the chat are enjoying my terrible Lois. So fantastic. All right. I think we've got time for one more chapter. 10 more minutes and we'll be at an hour, which I think I'll call it there. So let's do one last chapter. Is there anyone that I need to voice for this? Okay, nope. I think it's just Eddie and Roger for this chapter. It's nice and easy to wrap up with. My hair is doing some wild things today. I slipped out of the building through a side door, crossed the street, and came up on the rabbit from behind. Surprise! I growled. I grabbed the rabbit's arm and hustled him unceremoniously down the street. I whizzed my reluctant companion past several human-only and several tune-only bars before we came to a grubby hole-in-the-wall saloon, maybe 20 feet wide and 30 feet long, willing to serve both species. The bar, tended by a puffy-eared, flat-nosed human, ran the length of the right-hand wall. A bunch of derelict tunes held down one end. A bunch of derelict humans pegged down the other. The saloon's only interior decoration consisted of several framed newspapers welcoming Lindbergh back from Paris, a subtle play on the common-held belief that certain humans, Babe Ruth, Mae West, the Marx Brothers, and of course Lindbergh, were really humanoid tunes who had crossed the line. I marched Roger to a booth, sat him down, and slid in beside him, tapping against the wall. A tune waitress came over. In her younger days, she probably got mistaken for Dixie Dugan. Nowadays, she carried 40 pounds too much, 3 pounds too much with makeup, and the resemblance leaned more toward Petunia Pig. What voice am I going to do? I'll pick one out of the suggestions. Someone suggested the parrot from Aladdin. I'm going to wreck my mic doing some of these. I'll do Marge.
What'll it be?
Boilermaker for me, I said, and a shine for the furball. She waddled to the bar to fill out our order. I guess that's all she was going to say. The rabbit wiggled himself into some breathing room.
I'm sorry,
he said, misinterpreting the reason for my anger.
I know you told me to keep my distance, but I couldn't resist. My entire life I've been a clown, acting out jokes for a living. Here I saw the chance to get involved in something serious for a change, and I took it.
His right-hand fingers started a frisky jig on the booth top, which his left-hand fingers couldn't resist joining.
You can't imagine how exciting it's been for me to follow you and watch you work. Granted, I disobeyed your order, and for that I apologize. But to be honest, I'm delighted I did. I haven't this much fun in ages.
I'm glad I brightened your humdrum life, I said sarcastically. Maybe you'll do something for me in return. The rabbit doubled his ears up so they wouldn't collide with the booth top, which when he nodded his head.
Name it.
Tell me about your wife, I said with enough frost in my voice to turn the rabbit's nose blue.
My wife?
My wife? I'm sorry.
My wife?
The rabbit's word balloon miserably failed in its maiden flight, collapsing, half deflated across my shoulder. I grabbed it, squashed it into an hourglass shape, and tossed it in front of him. Jessica Rabbit, I pointed to the mangled balloon. Your wife. Remember her?
Oh, of course. Jessica.
Roger plucked the name from out of the air above him and extended it to me, pillowed in the cup of his palm.
Jessica. She's my wife.
Not going to do it. I rolled the name into a tiny ball and flicked it into orbit with the end of my thumb. And also Rocco de Grisi's current romantic interlude. How come you didn't tell me about her? The rabbit twiddled the stubby ends of his ears. I didn't think it was that important. I tilted my head back and rolled my eyes. Melodramatic, I know, but dealing with tunes seemed to have that effect on me. Your wife plays patty cake with one of the guys you work for, one of the guys you say reneged on your contract, and you don't think it's important. My friend, you've got a lot to learn about what makes the world go round.
But how come you didn't pry it out of me? Said Roger, turning untypically militant in his own defense. I mean, you've got some responsibilities in this case, too.
The waitress brought our drinks. While I fished out my wallet, she snapped a few stray ear puffs floating across the low ceiling. So maybe I made a mistake, I said, figuring there to be a zip percentage in arguing with a bubble brain like Roger. What say we can chalk it off to experience and start over?
Fine with me.
Great. Let's begin with how you and Jessica first met. The rabbit crossed his oblong pupils as though reading the points of his life off a crib sheet taped to the rear of his nose. Can I cross my eyes on stream? Am I doing it? Am I doing it? Are you looking, Mom? Mom, are you looking? I failed.
We met one day at a photo session.
At Carol Master's place.
Yes, Jessica had just finished shooting a liquor ad, and I was there to do a supporting role in a Jungle Gym strip. This was, of course, when I was still doing bit parts, before I signed with the Degreesies. We chatted for a while, nothing of great import, mainly trade gossip, who got his contract dropped, who got a new strip, who got married, who had kids, who got divorced. Normal small talk. We seemed to get along pretty well, so I asked her to dinner. I didn't expect her to accept, not with her being a humanoid and me being a barnyard, but she did. We went to this cozy Italian place and had a wonderful time. We talked and laughed and played kneesies under the table. She came back to my place for a drink. I made some popcorn, lit a fire, played her a song on my piano. Then, more as a gag than anything else, I proposed to her, got down on bended knee, the whole works. To my great surprise, Jessica accepted. We flew to Reno and tied the knot. He commemorated the happy event by looping his ears into a bow and bugging out his eyes into two perfectly heart-shaped eyes. You mean Jessica married you on your first date? Yeah, I could hardly believe it.
Same here. How long after your marriage before the Degreesies gave you a contract?
Almost immediately.
How did it happen?
One night, right after Jessica and I got married, we were sitting in our living room listening to our stereo. I told her how much I envied her, how it had always been my fondest wish to be a well-known star. The next day, out of the blue, Rocco Degreasy called up. He said he'd seen me in some of my supporting roles and said he thought I had enough talent to carry my own strip, and he offered me a contract.
Did you know about Jessica's previous relationship with Rocco, that she had left him to marry you? The rabbit nodded slowly.
But I didn't think she ever really loved him. I think he had something over on her, something dreadful that he used to hold her to him. A girl as wonderful as Jessica would never voluntarily stay with anyone as awful as Rocco.
Any chance Jessica might have been influential in getting you your contract?
I don't know.
Roger's ears turned limp as stalks of old celery.
I always secretly suspected she probably had gone to Rocco about it, but I never asked her outright. I was afraid too. I desperately wanted to believe I had gotten it based on my own merits, not because Rocco thought it might win Jessica back. Anyway, for a while I was the happiest bunny alive. I had my Jessica, and I had a contract with the biggest syndicate in the business, and I had their promise to make me a star.
So much for that part of Roger's life where everybody had sung in tune. Now for the later sessions, where the notes had turned sour and the strolling violinist had left in disgust. What caused your marriage to break up? Roger's ears flopped over double and wobbled to side, like a television aerial trying unsuccessfully to align itself. Pardon moi! It's the water, you know. It's too early in the morning for that stuff. His ears wobbled side to side, like a television aerial trying unsuccessfully to align itself with a very faint signal.
It was a real mystery. We had been married for about a year when, about 2 weeks ago, almost overnight, Jessica changed from a kind, wonderful, caring person to a shrewish, raving witch.
Roger's body sagged. You don't have any idea what caused the change?
None. She refused to discuss it, or even admit that she was any different. I suggested a marriage counselor, but she said no. She moved out on me and moved back in with Rocco DeGreasy.
You seen her since?
No, I tried to talk to her a couple times, but she avoids me. I understand she contacted a lawyer and put a divorce in the works.
His eyelids dripped to a half-mast in memory of his dear departed, and he saluted her with a long drink of shine. His ear puffs, when they appeared, came out in a curving column of spheres, resembling the smoke from an underpowered locomotive chugging along up an impossibly difficult hill. Okay, now that we've covered your marital squabbles, let's do your assault on Rocco DeGreasy. The rabbit's pupil bounced back and forth across his eyelids, like the electronic blips in an arcade tennis game.
I should have told you about that. I knew I could never hide it from you. Not from a pro.
His thought balloon formed an image of a wooden hammer that walloped a few licks of sense into his head.
It happened the first time we met after Jessica left me. I accused Rocco of somehow blackmailing her into it. Know what he did? He laughed at me. He didn't even answer. He just laughed at me. Tell me, Mr. Valiant, do you know how miserable it is to have a person laugh at you?
It seemed an odd statement from someone whose main function in life was to make people laugh at him, but I didn't feel up to tackling his philosophical implications. Look, I said, I'm not so sure this is really my kind of job. It seems to me that maybe you ought to do is take this up with your Toon Union Labor Board. You need an arbitrator, not a private eye.
I already threatened to do that. I did. But Rocco warned me that it might have some unfortunate consequences.
Any idea what he meant?
Sure. He meant his brother, Dominic.
Roger shuddered the way you do when an icy draft slips down the back of your neck.
I'm not a brave rabbit, Mr. Valiant. I'm not about to buck Rocco and Dominic by myself. That's why I came to you.
I cradled my head in my hands. What had I ever done to deserve this? What had I ever done to deserve this? Other detectives get the Maltese Falcon. I get a paranoid rabbit. You should have told me about your marital problems before, I said self-righteously, half hoping I'd provoke the rabbit to fire me. But the rabbit accepted the scolding with remarkably good grace.
Well, I would have, except you didn't ask. When we first met, you were so taciturn and in such a hurry. Who am I to second-guess a private detective? I assumed a closed-mouthed, speedy approach might be your style. I assumed you were a pro and you knew what you were doing. I guess I was right. I mean, you did figure it out anyway.
Yeah, sure I did, I said with glum resignation. The rabbit dropped his voice so low, word balloons barely cleared the booth top.
Where do you go next, Mr. Valiant?
The words inside the balloon flickered on and off like a decrepit neon sign.
Are you going to see Jessica?
Yes, I am. First thing tomorrow morning. The rabbit bowed his head and sent up a scrolly illuminated balloon that could have been ripped straight out of a prayer book.
Well, when you do, would you give her a message for me? Would you tell her I love her? Tell her I miss her very much, and I'd like to give her another try. Tell her I'm sorry for whatever it is I did to offend her, and I promise to change. I promise to do anything she wants, if she'll only take me back. Will you tell her that, please?
I didn't stick around much longer. It depressed me to see a grown rabbit cry. And there we have it. That is where we will be finishing for today. Doug is laughing at my burp. Well done. Well done, sir. Classy joint this. So, the story is shaping up. It seems that there are definitely discrepancies between Roger's story and Rocco DeGreasy's story. Carol Masters seems to fully believe Roger and think that he is an angel who can do no wrong. Roger has a few screws loosed and sincerely believes that his wife still loves him and that Rocco must be blackmailing her into leaving him and acting so cold. Well, that's the end of the story for today. For those of you who stuck around, I did have one neat thing I wanted to show you. I'm sure you saw the thumbnail that I added for this YouTube, this video that you're watching right now. And that Roger obviously doesn't look exactly like the Roger from the movie. The detective in it is very clearly just Humphrey Bogart. That's actually concept art from Roger Rabbit, very early in production when they were still trying to find the look of Roger. So I've got a few bits and pieces of concept art that I thought I'd share with you before we sign off today. Let's take a look. There we go. So that's Roger, sort of in his earliest form. Big long feet, a large nose. In the book, it mentions that he's brown and looks like he's walked into a freshly painted white wall. So I imagine there's spots, a white spot on his face and his belly, that sort of thing. Very lanky, just ridiculous feet. You know who he looks like to me? He looks like the Trix Rabbit. They still had a while to go before they really figured out what he ought to look like. But you can see the suspenders that are mentioned in this book, how he has extremely stooped shoulders, no shoulders at all, really, and he has to tape them on. I've got some more here. There he is, front on. Interesting. Let's just power through these. This is sort of an animation drawing. This is all the big-nosed design. Here's an interesting one where his eyes, he looks a little crazed, but that suits him, doesn't it? That's probably him in this chapter where he's following Eddie wearing the world's most obvious trench coat, hat pulled way down low, and his ears tucked in. That's an animation drawing. You can see the little peg holes at the bottom where that register them so that each drawing is aligned properly. This is gorgeous, in full color, no less. A lovely piece of art. I really wonder what it might have looked like if the movie had have looked more like this. More stylized, to be sure, but I think that the fully rounded 3D design they went with, by 3D I mean three-dimensional, this is a little more angular and graphic. I think that was the way it had to go to make them look like they existed in real space. And this is interesting. I think these are the last ones that I have of the old Roger. These are some cells. They did a little test to animate the character. And these are from that. I actually have a clip of those animation tests very early on that pull dialogue directly from the book. So when we get to those chapters where those bits of dialogue are read, I will share those clips with you. So something to look forward to. There we are. There's a clip. There's an image from one of those test clips. Very interesting. I haven't seen this scene in particular, but that's fascinating. This is a look that they obviously didn't stick with for too long. It's sort of transitional between the one that we're seeing before and what he ended up looking like. Got a little shirt and tie on there and some jeans. That's interesting. And this is obviously the finalized look. Some very nice sketches here. And then the model sheet that we all know and love, the final Roger. I'm sure many of you, well, those of you who are animation buffs know that Richard Williams, the animator and designer of Roger Rabbit, the head animator, I should say, not the sole animator. I'm sure he would have if he had the time. He was a bit crazy that way. He tried to combine as many different little signatures from different animated characters as he could. I know that the red mop of hair is from Droopy. The yellow gloves, is that from, early Bugs Bunny cartoons, perhaps? I don't know all of them. I think the red shorts is definitely a Mickey Mouse callback. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Me and
Humphrey Bogart, we'll see you next week, see?
Yeah, don't forget to tune in.
All right, take care, everybody. Wash your hands. Do all that stuff that you're supposed to do. Stay indoors. Take care. Be kind. That